People who grew up in the 1990s don't rush the moment. They don't panic when things take time. And they don't feel the need to prove every second of their life exists. There's a quiet difference in how they move through the world. They grew up at a strange turning point. Old enough to remember life before everything went online, young enough to adapt when it did. That split shaped how their minds work. They didn't grow up fully analog or fully digital. They grew up learning how to switch between both. They remember writing things down by hand. They also remember learning to type fast. They waited for phone calls. Then they learned to send emails. They used paper maps, then GPS. Nothing replaced the other overnight. Everything came in layers. That matters more than people realize. Because when you grow up during change, you don't cling to one way of living. You learn flexibility. You learn how to operate without constant help. If something didn't work, you didn't search for an answer online. You figured it out. Or you asked someone. Or you failed and tried again. Getting lost wasn't a disaster. It was normal. Forgetting a number meant you memorized it next time. Problems weren't solved instantly. They were worked through. That created a quiet confidence. Not loud, not showy. Just the belief that if something goes wrong, you'll handle it. But maybe the biggest difference shows up in something people rarely talk about. Privacy. People who grew up in the 1990s had childhoods that didn't leave permanent evidence. No cameras in their pockets. No posts saved forever. No videos resurfacing years later. Mistakes happened and then disappeared. Embarrassing moments lived in memory, not on a screen. Awkward phases ended. Experiments with identity faded. You weren't trapped by who you used to be. That kind of privacy changes how you grow. You learn that mistakes don't define you forever. That trying things doesn't ruin your future. That failure isn't permanent. And when you know your past won't chase you forever, you take more chances being yourself. That freedom shaped how people from the 90s relate to the world. And it shaped how they relate to each other. Because once you grow up without being watched, you start noticing what changes when everyone is. And that's where things get even more interesting. Making plans in the 1990s was simple and unforgiving. You called someone's house. If they weren't home, you waited. If you said you'd meet at 3, you showed up at 3. There was no safety net, no quick text to cancel, no running late message, no group chat to renegotiate. Plans were commitments, and commitment meant accountability. If you didn't show up, people noticed. If you were late, it mattered. If you flaked, there were consequences. That taught something subtle but powerful. Your word had weight. People who grew up in the 90s learned early that trust isn't built through promises. It's built through consistency. Through being there when you said you would be. Through showing up, even when it wasn't convenient. And that lesson stuck. It's why many people from that generation feel uneasy with constant last-minute changes today. It's not about control, it's about reliability. When plans meant effort, they meant something. But patience was learned in other ways too. Waiting wasn't optional, it was normal. You waited for songs to download. You waited for pages to load. You waited through that loud modem sound, hoping no one picked up the phone and ruined everything. Sometimes you waited hours for something that lasted minutes. And every time you waited, your brain adapted. You learned that effort didn't mean instant reward, that frustration didn't mean failure, that some things were worth guarding and protecting until they finished. That kind of waiting trained persistence. And then there were limits. You didn't have endless options. You had boundaries. A blank cassette tape, limited storage. One chance to record a song before the DJ talked over it. So you chose carefully. You learned to decide what mattered, what deserved space, what was worth keeping. And when you made a choice, you lived with it. Those limits shaped taste, judgment, discernment. When everything isn't available all the time, you stop asking, what's next? You start asking, is this worth it? That question still follows people from the 90s today, and it explains why infinite options don't feel exciting to them. They feel exhausting. But the deepest impact of those limits showed up somewhere else entirely. Music wasn't background noise in the 1990s. It was an experience. You saved money. You went to the store. You bought an album. And when you got home, you listened from start to finish. Not just the hits, the quiet tracks, the strange ones, the songs you didn't understand at first. You learned patience through listening. You learned depth. Albums weren't skipped through. They were absorbed. And because of that, music attached itself to memory, to moments, to entire phases of life. That same pattern showed up everywhere. Games didn't save progress. You started over if you failed. Movies played without pause. Cartoons aired once, and if you missed them, they were gone. So you paid attention. When something couldn't be replayed, it mattered more the first time. Presence wasn't a skill. It was required. That trained focus. Long stretches of attention without interruption. No notifications pulling you away. No second screen splitting your mind. When you were there, you were really there. And then there was boredom. The kind people don't understand anymore. Long car rides staring out the window. Waiting rooms with nothing to do. Afternoons with no plans and no screens. At first, boredom felt uncomfortable. Then something happened. Your mind filled the space. You imagined. You noticed things. You made stories out of nothing. You learned how to sit with your thoughts without escaping them. That ability didn't disappear. It turned into creativity, reflection, problem solving, the ability to think without distraction. People who grew up in the 90s don't panic in silence. They don't fear empty moments. They know something eventually comes from them. And that's why constant stimulation feels overwhelming to them now. Because once you learn how to be alone with your mind, noise starts to feel unnecessary. But the final effect of all this isn't nostalgia. It's something much quieter and much stronger. All these small experiences added up. Patience, focus, flexibility, comfort with uncertainty. People who grew up in the 1990s don't always talk about these traits. They don't wear them like badges, but they carry them quietly. They know how to adapt without losing themselves, how to move forward without rushing, how to live in the present without broadcasting it. They remember a world that moved slower, and they survived a world that sped up. That combination creates resilience, not the loud kind, the steady kind. The kind that doesn't break when technology fails, or trends shift, or attention spans collapse. Because they know how to operate with or without tools. They understand that some things improve with speed, and some things fall apart because of it. They don't reject progress. They just don't worship it. And maybe that's why their mindset feels different. They don't need constant proof that life is happening. They don't need instant answers to feel secure. They don't need endless choice to feel satisfied. They know that waiting doesn't weaken things. It often strengthens them. And as the world gets louder, faster, and more crowded with noise, that quiet understanding becomes rare, valuable, almost invisible. If any of this felt familiar to you, you're not imagining it. And if it made you reflect on your own experiences, that wasn't accidental. Because some generations didn't just grow up during change. They learned how to live inside it. If this connected with you, let me know in the comments what growing up in the 1990s taught you. Tap like if this made you think differently about your past. And subscribe if you want more psychology that actually understands how people work.